Combining protein and veggies might really be the solution. It's like combining a skunk and a squirrel or merging them. It just works, okay? So when you consume protein, you do have an insulin spike. I'm not trying to like alarm you or anything like that, but when you consume some beef or you consume some eggs, you have a pretty big insulin spike. As a matter of fact, some studies have even demonstrated, and I've talked about this in other videos, that the insulin spike that you get from protein, from eggs, can even be higher than some carbohydrates in some cases. But there is a huge, tremendous caveat that we have to address with that, and it just can't go unnoticed. When you consume protein, you get an insulin spike, but you also get a glucagon spike, okay? So what happens is if you consume just carbohydrates, you have this big insulin spike, right? Or not necessarily big, but you have an insulin spike. And that means that your body is going to absorb those carbohydrates into, the proper areas, right? Or utilize them. With protein, you have an insulin spike to make sure that the protein that you consume actually goes into storage. But you also have this release of glucagon, and the release of glucagon makes it so that you are not dropping your blood sugar a whole lot when your insulin is spiking. So the bottom line with this is that you don't really have a huge fat storage negative effect that comes when you consume protein and get an insulin spike from that. But you can have a potential negative response when it comes down to insulin resistance. When you spike your insulin eating protein, you still can contribute to potential insulin resistance, but there's some studies that take a look at that. So let's address it. After this video, check out Thrive Market. They are today's sponsor and they are awesome, okay? They are who I use for almost all of my pantry essentials now. So they're an online membership-based grocery store, so you go to their site and you can select whichever category of diet you're doing or whatever kind of foods you want. Let's say I wanted to make keto baked goods. I could select keto, then I could go to baked goods, and then I could filter even more, gluten-free, sugar-free, whatever, right? So the filter system is what makes it amazing. It's just epic. So there is a link down below, and that will save you 25% off your first order with Thrive, but also get you a free gift because you're using that link down below in the description. So check them out after this video, and a big thank you to Thrive for the continued support. So now that we've kind of covered that, yes, protein can trigger a potential insulin spike, let's look at some positive effects here that might happen if you added insoluble fiber along with it. Okay, insoluble fiber, those are the fibers that you're mainly getting from veggies. Okay, these are you might get it from some lettuce, some romaine lettuce, you might get it from broccoli. Okay, it's the fiber that really has no other purpose other than improving transit time. It is literally roughage, okay? So what happens is insoluble fiber increases transit time. Now, at first glance, people don't really want to combine protein with veggies because it's kind of if you're increasing transit time and you're pushing things through the gut faster, then you are potentially making it so that you're not absorbing as much protein. Now, let me back up a second and kind of parlay this into a glucose situation where it's beneficial. There's a study that was published in the journal Nutrition that looked at human epidemiological studies as well as rodent mechanistic studies or research. And it found that when you added insoluble fiber to the diet, it alleviated the potential insulin resistance risk significantly, even more so than soluble fiber. Okay, this is because it's improving transit time. So what do I mean by all this? Well, insoluble fiber is pushing things through the gut a lot faster, which means that carbohydrates that you would be consuming along with insoluble fiber are going to push through faster, less absorption, okay, or just quicker transit, means less of an insulin spike. So what does that do? It potentially reduces the risk of developing insulin resistance because you're not having as high of an insulin spike because things are moving through your gut faster. Well, this is a bummer for protein because we want to absorb more of our protein, right? We don't want the protein to just rip through the digestive system really fast. However, we still have to remember that protein can still play a role in insulin resistance. Not as much as carbohydrates to a degree, of course. But if we improve the transit time with the protein, it can actually still be beneficial overall. We may absorb slightly less protein, but the positive effect that we get in terms of insulin sensitivity will far outweigh that over the long term. Envision this, okay? This is purely hypothetical, but it's to paint a scenario. Let's say you have a super insulin sensitive person here. And let's say you have a very insulin resistant person here, okay? If they both eat the same amount of protein and they both eat the same amount of carbs, they both eat the same amount of fiber, the insulin-resistant person is not going to, or potentially, based upon research, not going to be able to utilize those nutrients as well. The glucose, the carbohydrates are going to contribute to potentially higher blood sugar. They're not going to get absorbed and utilized because they're potentially, in this case, insulin resistant. I know I use the word potentially a lot, but I'm very careful in terms of claims and stuff. Now with protein, if we have less insulin sensitivity, then we have less absorption of protein, right? Because protein absorbs when we are insulin sensitive. So then we have person A, who is very insulin sensitive. They are going to utilize the carbohydrates better, and they're going to absorb the protein better. So over the long haul, I would much rather have better insulin sensitivity and less insulin resistance than worry about absorbing 2 or 3 extra grams of protein, or even 10 for that matter, because things are moving fast through the digestive system. So should you absolutely always pair protein with veggies? No, there are times, like post-workout when you just want quick protein absorption, forget the veggies. Morning time may not be the best time to combine protein with veggies, okay? Because again, you want to absorb things quick. But in the afternoon and evening, I would highly recommend that you do pair your protein with veggies. It does help. It doesn't have to be all the time, but even if you have a protein shake, like mid-afternoon as a snack, it wouldn't be a bad thing to have some veggies along with it, or at least insoluble fiber, okay? So insoluble fiber, you can still get it from chia, you can still get it from flax. Those are mostly noted because they're soluble fiber, but like chia, for instance, still has insoluble fiber. So you could add like 1 to 2 tablespoons of chia seeds to your protein shake, or ground chia. Add it to your protein shake. Then you're just getting a bunch of insoluble fiber along with your protein shake, slowing down the absorption, so maybe you can actually, not have as much of an insulin spike along with it. Okay. And again, I cannot stress enough, the insulin spike is still accompanied by glucagon. It is not the same as an insulin spike that comes from carbohydrates, but some of the downstream longer term effects can still apply. Okay. So protein with veggies, protein with insoluble fiber. I'll see you tomorrow.